Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 News. Media day for the title decider is done. We've heard from all of the contenders what they expect to happen this weekend. Max especially relaxed going into Abu Dhabi, believing that he's got nothing to lose at all. But the McLaren boys certainly feeling the pressure and responding and denying some rumours over the last few days. The team orders have been discussed. Lando says that he'd love it if Piastri yielded if necessary, but Oscar seems far from convinced that's going to happen on track. George Russell even said it would be a disgrace if Lando was to win the title that way and if McLaren were to employ such team orders. But if Max is going to win, who knows what will happen in the next couple of days. Will they be necessary if employed at all, or even listened to if the time comes? Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, all that good stuff. There's a lot to get into today. We're going to start here with, well, MoneyGram Haas, that will become Toyota Gazoo Racing Haas, or TGR Haas F1 team from next season. So they've had the MoneyGram deal for some time. It's been very lucrative for Haas F1, but it's kind of relevant because over the last few days we talked about Yuki, whether he still has a future in F1. We know that Toyota are getting increasingly involved in the workings behind the scenes at Haas. There has been a theory for some time that maybe at some point Toyota may simply want to come back to Formula 1 and take over the entire Haas operation. They will now be a full-on title partner for next season. So TGR Haas, the Toyota Gazoo Racing team for next season's championship. They confirm it in a big press release that they put out today as well. These are all the details if you guys are interested. It's funny because I've got MoneyGram at the bottom here, but MoneyGram is not mentioned one time in the article, despite it, well, it makes sense, but you know, despite quite some time being together as partners on this. Now, speaking of Japanese drivers and influence, then yet maybe something in this for Yuki Tsunoda. He actually put out a tweet yesterday which had, 170 odd thousand likes on Twitter here. I'm not finished yet. Finding out I won't have a race seat in 2026 was incredibly tough, but I'm determined to work harder than ever with Red Bull as test and reserve driver to develop with the team and prove that I do deserve a place on the grid. Life is full of setbacks. This is mine. It's not going to deter me from being the best F1 driver that I can be. So Tsunoda's not saying, you know what, it's been a pleasure, I'm done. He wants to get back on the grid. I think he's got a decent chance of doing it in the next couple of years. Look, it's unfortunate. You go to the Red Bull second seat alongside Max, especially at this level of, let's say, advancement during the regulatory cycle. You're going to get cooked pretty much whoever you are. And, well, we've seen a number of drivers get chewed up and spat out. Tsunoda has been no exception. Maybe Hadjar will have a better time with a brand new car in 26. That is plausible. I think for poor Yuki, right, had he stayed at Racing Bulls, it's interesting because if you're staying at AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, Racing Bulls, whatever you want to call them, the goal there is to drive for Red Bull eventually. Once you get that chance, if it doesn't work out, going back doesn't really make sense, but also you don't want to stay there forever because you're never going to win anything, right? You're never going to win a race. Okay, it's happened very rare occasions. Gasly, Monza, obviously Vettel way back in the day as well. But you're never going to win a race, never going to win a championship within reason. So you want to get the Red Bull drive. But then this happens, right? So Tsunoda is kind of feeling a little bit two ways about this because he feels that he had a big part to play in the development of that Racing Bulls, the AlphaTauri, whatever, over the last few years to get it to the point where they were more competitive. You might argue that. You might also argue that they simply took as many parts as they could from the more successful Red Bull program recently, and that helped them as well. But Tsunoda was like, yeah, a bit of a regret to miss out on driving what was a pretty great car this year in the Racing Bulls that he believes he helped develop. Hadjar talked a little bit of, which he did help develop, obviously. The question is, how much did he contribute? Hadjar says, there was no phone call about his promotion. That's not how it worked. I had a talk with Helmut. He made me understand I was driving for Red Bull and that I have to deliver. So, well, good luck to Hadjar next year. I think he may well need it. We shall see. These were the scenes today at the press conferences. These were the key championship contenders, the only championship contenders. Pretty rare we get to a title decider with more than one. This year we have three for the first time since 2010. This was Charles Leclerc in his press conference because, of course, they'd put the World Championship trophy there for the drivers to have a look at. Leclerc was having a good look at it. He was well, I don't know, maybe in certain cultures or certain sports this isn't considered to be too bad, but not like it's bad. And I'm not especially especially superstitious in general, but I don't think I would ever touch a trophy before I'd won it. I know that in football, this is maybe considered more of a big deal on, touching or even getting particularly close to a trophy that you've not yet won. So hopefully for Charles Leclerc, this is not like, bad luck precisely, but I know that there was quite a lot of talk about this today of, damn, like, Charles, is he asking for more trouble, or maybe he's had so much bad luck, so much misfortune with Ferrari that it can't get any worse, right? Next year, are Ferrari going to be title contenders? According to the rumours coming out behind the scenes, possibly, but probably not, all things considered. And then the big talk is that, well, maybe Leclerc will go elsewhere and leave Ferrari. Will Leclerc ever get his hands on that title, more so than this image? I don't know, but time will tell. The same question, I suppose, could be asked for Oscar. He didn't touch it, but he did have a nice, deep, longing stare into the trophy that he could still win. Biggest race of Oscar's career this weekend, the possibility to win the championship. Not like even if he dominates the race, he could still easily lose the championship because he needs Lando to be 6th or lower in the event where Piastri were to win in order for him to win the championship. And it's not impossible, but it is still relatively unlikely. There's been lots of talk about that Piastri-McLaren relationship this season, and that will continue today because we have a few interesting words on that to say in a couple of seconds. This was another screenshot of, these gentlemen. Just pretty funny looking at their facial expressions, really, because, yeah, I think we know why these three just happens to be in the press conference together. And, of course, they are very big rivals on track this weekend, but have to keep things relatively cordial for the time being. Now, a couple of things on Ferrari. The idea is, of course, that they sacrifice this year for next year. They will finish 4th in the Constructors this year. That is now guaranteed. It's pretty ugly, to be honest. They've not finished 4th many times, but maybe that's all part of the plan, right? Terrible season, but now they get more testing time. They get more development resources going into the upcoming season. Can they make use of that? Well, they'll need to, right? They're in a good position to do so. Of course, they get less prize money, but as we know, Ferrari also get that legacy payment from the FIA or from F1 anyway, just because they are Ferrari. So I don't think they're going to miss too much the prize money. The point is that they will need to make good use of those extra sessions than McLaren have. As we know, McLaren first in the Constructors, they will have significantly less testing time. So maybe that is something that Ferrari have to be positive about. Hamilton was also asked, what would you say to the title contenders? You were here in 2021 fighting Max, of course, won 7 world championships outside of that. And Hamilton says, I wouldn't give anyone advice. What are you talking about? These are my competitors. So I'd probably be telling them fibs. As I said, they're my competitors, so I'm not rooting for anybody but myself and this team. So, I thought that was kind of interesting for Hamilton to say, not like he's wrong, but it's just funny because this season, it's not like they've been especially competitive with those drivers in question. But I still think that's the correct mentality from Hamilton. He also says, if I can get through a season like this, there is nothing that I cannot face moving forward. So it just goes to show how challenging it has been on and off the track. I think there was another couple of comments from Hamilton as well, but we'll leave it there because this was another one from Antonelli. Thought it was kind of funny. The abuse that he suffered online after the mistake that allowed Norris past at the end of Qatar was very important. Antonelli said that I think maybe Russell and also Norris had messaged him afterwards. I thought it was pretty funny because obviously Norris was saying, oh, don't listen to the trolls, the haters, whatever. I imagine that was the crux of it, but also pretty funny that Norris messaged him like, oh, good one, mate, appreciate it. But no, Max obviously messaged him and said, well, Antonelli says, I can't say what Max told me about it because it contains some bad words, but he just said, don't worry about these kinds of people because they are brainless, so just focus on the job. So, gotta wonder what Verstappen actually said, whether it contained any, F's and S's or whatever, or whether there was maybe another word for brainless that he may have used. I just thought it was pretty funny that Kimi went for that option rather than maybe some of the others that Max could have used in his assessment. Who really knows? But let's talk about the title fight because, well, this weekend is going to be juicy, and it already is. So today there was an article that came out over at codesports.com.au, right? So it's out of the Australian press, and it is paywalled, but these are the notes from on the article. Now, this is real interesting, and I'll just mention this before we discuss it. Sky Sports have come out and said that actually this was erroneous reporting to a certain extent, but, make of it what you will. So this is what we've said. It's no wonder then that McLaren have now banned Oscar Piastri from holding separate interviews with Australian media before the biggest race of his life, claiming he's just too busy to speak with his country hacks. Now, they go on to say, one veteran UK reporter told this masthead Piastri's mistreatment was the worst he had ever seen towards a top driver. And the reporter goes on to say, another insider speaking it's meant to say confidentially, but it actually says confidentiality. So, I don't know, question that a little bit. But anyway, confidentially, because they fear that they could be sacked for speaking out, said that they had never witnessed a potential world champion undermined so openly by their own team. Yet another insider, also fearful of repercussions, said, it is disgusting to see what is happening. It's like he's fighting with one arm tied behind his back. He's constantly being undermined by his team. The bias against Piastri is unquestionable. So again, these insiders, are these McLaren insiders? I would say relatively doubtful. They may, I don't doubt these comments, but I wonder how well connected these insiders truly are, whether that's kind of more of an, whether they really are insiders, right? Whether these are other people in the paddock who are seeing what's happening at McLaren, giving their perspective. Look, I don't know exactly where this is coming from, but of course you've got to appreciate it's from the Aussie media. It does seem that this is maybe a little bit, as Rachel Brooks says, erroneous, because basically McLaren have denied any media. So it's not that they've told Oscar, you can't talk to the Aussie press because it's going to get controversial. They basically want their drivers to be absolutely fully focused, and they're not going to do any media commitment at all this week, regardless who the media is. So there's obviously two sides to the story on that one. But the drivers do have to do the official press conferences, and that is what we saw today. These are the rear wings as well so far for Abu Dhabi. Medium-ish downforce this weekend. There's a lot of benefit in Sector 2 to running a lower wing, but on the rest of the track it does carry some level of disadvantage. Charles Leclerc says, because he might be in the mix. It is doubtful, of course. I think Ferrari will be better here than they were in Qatar. I think the question really is, can Mercedes get themselves into the mix? There was some reporting that McLaren might not be so dominant around here, but I'm still expecting them to be very good. Leclerc says, I'd rather just win the race and have nothing to do with how those lot fight for the championship. But if I'm second, third or fourth, whoever's behind, I'll drive the same way. I'm fighting for my team. And George, of course, will absolutely say the same thing. Look, George is not just going to let Lando through because it's his friends, right? That's not how it works. Also, that would be race manipulation anyway. So, look, and okay, maybe George might not defend the insiders aggressively as he might do if he himself was fighting for the championship, but, they're not going to let each other through, right? It is what it is. These guys are racers at the end of the day. They are different animals when the helmet goes on. Max says that, McLaren are a bit nervous, as well they should be. I would also be a little bit less relaxed if I had quite a few things that went wrong, as we have seen for McLaren. Max says, I'm very relaxed. I've got nothing to lose here. So again, Max is going to be a scary beast going into turn 1 on Sunday. Max also says this, the trophy is the same. I've got 4 of those back at home. So, quite the comment to make really in front of all the press and in front of Oscar and Lando next to him. I've already achieved everything that I wanted. So, look, Max is happy as it is, but as I say, Max is an absolutely ruthless competitor. He can smell the 5th world title. He's not going to try and lose it, right? So if the opportunity is there, we will see. It is interesting, I will say, that Max's family are not here. So his parents, I think his dad is off racing in, rallying somewhere anyway, and then his mother's back at home. So they basically cancelled everything after Zandvoort because they were like, all right, this is cooked. And then magically he's somehow back in the title fight. There was also talk about what Max did on his prep week. He said, I spent some time with my new daughter, figured some stuff out for GT3 next year, and planned some stuff with his sim racing team. So, pretty straightforward stuff. Now, I think Citrus may be a bit biased in the way that he's presenting this, but there was an interesting excerpt from another article that said, in a sign of his heightened anxiety, Norris rearranged his schedule by pulling out of his customary briefing with the British press for the first time in his 152 races to concentrate on the task in hand. Is that heightened anxiety from Lando? Or is that just probably quite prudent on a weekend which is the most important weekend of your career? Any additional preparation time, any less distraction from the media is probably a good idea. And this aligns with what we have heard from Rachel Brooks, that basically McLaren have told their drivers, do not speak to anyone that you don't have to this weekend. The key question, though, that was asked in the press today, what about team orders? Will it be necessary? I would say the necessity of team orders is relatively slim. I think there's, 20-30% chance that it even would be required, possibly less than that. But even if it would be required, and probably is less than that, but even if it was required, then what are the chances that Oscar actually does it? Or would McLaren even come on the radio to suggest such an idea? I have a difficult time believing that they haven't talked about it, or that at least the team haven't talked about it. Maybe with the drivers, they're going to leave it until race day. But I would be shocked if the team hasn't discussed what the scenario would be, what they would do in this scenario. So Lando says it's up to Oscar if he would do it. So the hypothetical is Max is leading, George is second, Piastri is third, Lando is fourth. On to the final lap 58 of the Grand Prix. In that scenario, Max is champion, but if Piastri yields to Lando, then Lando is champion, right? So Piastri effectively gets to choose. Is Max champion? Is Lando champion? The team will obviously have a preference there, but they may not want to intervene. I don't know. It's interesting anyway. Apparently they've not talked about it. Piastri says we've not discussed it. Until I know what is expected, I don't really have an answer. Because obviously Piastri's not trying to yield. And in the hypothetical that something completely crazy happens on the last lap and Piastri all of a sudden finds himself in a winning position, you wouldn't want to yield really before the final corner. But then what if there's a safety car happens right at the end? Then you can't yield. I don't know. And then you might have to pit. We talked about that over the last few days. I'm sure it's something that they will have thought about, but at least they're saying to the press today that they've not discussed it. And as I say, the chances of this being required are relatively slim because it basically requires Max to be winning the race. Then it requires Piastri and Lando to be in the precise positions where a swap may be relevant. So I don't think we're going to see this play out, but talking about it is nonetheless very interesting. If this was Lando's full comment, obviously I would love it, right? It hasn't been discussed. I would love it, but I don't think I would ask because, I don't know, it's up to Oscar if he would allow it. It's not down to me. If it's the same if it was the other way around, would I be willing to or not? Personally, I think I would because that's kind of what I'm like, but it's not up to me. I don't want to ask for it because I don't think it's necessarily a fair question. If that is how it ends and Max wins them, that's it. Congrats to him, and we look forward to next year. It doesn't change anything. So, look, Lando's playing this whole thing down. And it's easy to read that and think, oh, well, Lando, he's a bit whimsical. Whether he wins or loses, he doesn't really care. And look, Lando may present that publicly, and I think that it actually does help him manage some of the expectations and the pressure himself, but it's very clear how much Lando wants this, right? Lando was also asked, what would it mean to win the championship? This has been my whole life. It would mean the world to me. It'd mean the world to everyone who supported me. Other than that, don't know what to say. So, look, and I think even last weekend, you guys may have seen this clip after Qatar, when George threw a little bit of a dig at Lando because someone in the media had told George that Lando had blamed him for what happened in qualifying. You guys remember when Lando did his quali lap and George pulled over to the right on the start-finish straight. Probably Lando wasn't expecting that, whatever. And you could tell that Lando got a bit frustrated at this suggestion. And you could kind of see the fire in his eyes which you don't often see when the helmet comes off, I think, for Lando. But regardless, McLaren say they've not really discussed it. Piastri, of course, is not going to say, oh, yeah, I'll bend over backwards to McLaren, especially with what's happened over the last few weeks. The reality is, I would be shocked if McLaren wouldn't come on the radio to discuss this if it was necessary at the time. And Russell says, though, I don't think it's acceptable or reasonable to ask a driver who is within a shot of the championship to move over for your teammate. For me, it wouldn't be fair at all. They both need to be given a shot, and if they both lose out because of it, you just say the other guy did a better job and that's it. So, look, what do you think of this take? It's definitely an interesting take. I think as fans of the sport, we don't like team orders generally, and the only reason why they're really allowed is because they're kind of impossible to police. They used to ban them and then the teams would try and get around them. You guys know how it went back in the day. So nowadays things have changed. Team orders are here to stay. But fans don't like them, right? Like, if Piastri has done a better job than Lando this weekend, and Piastri is third and Lando's fourth, then, you know, is Max at that point the deserving champion? Well, very much whoever wins, I think, will be deserving. But the point is, will Russell or the fans be happy if Piastri just pulls over to one side and allows Lando through for the championship? Not necessarily, right? But at the same time, if it wasn't for McLaren having such a competitive pairing, then this championship would be long over anyway, and one of the McLaren boys would have won it over Max. So I can see both sides, but also, you know, we're in a world where team orders exist. Why would McLaren not tell Oscar to yield for Lando to win if those are the only options? Lando wins or Max wins, right? Like, surely it's a no-brainer. Whether Oscar would agree, different question. Russell, however, is vehemently against this, and also Russell is absolutely trying to get involved. Like, he wants to win this race this weekend, and he might have a decent chance to do it. So, you know, I would not count Russell out of being a competitive force. The world, as I say, with a Verstappen, Russell, Piastri, Norris, like, that is not an implausibility. It's relatively unlikely, of course, but it's not an implausibility. And as Russell says, I don't know what I would do in Piastri's spot. I'd probably just unplug the radio, and then Norris has to accept fate. So, like, I think as a competitor and as a fan of wanting the driver who wins the championship this weekend to actually win the race, that would be nice as well, to cap it off in some sort of style. I think I agree with what Russell says. The reality, however, may end up being somewhat different. So tweet your thoughts in the comments. There were some guys asked as well. I think Sainz was asked, Hadjar, Leclerc, Russell. Who do they think is going to win? And look, Norris is the expected winner. He's 12 points ahead. He's handled the pressure reasonably well in recent weeks. Not spectacularly so, but I think he's done okay given what he was up to last season and the early part of this season. And we know that he goes well around Abu Dhabi as well. So there are some things pointing in his direction, but as we know, it's far from guaranteed. Just the final thing then, these are the timings for this weekend. So Saturday qualifying is at 1:15. The Sunday race start is at 1 p.m. This is local time in the UK. I'll just let you guys know, on Sunday, I'm swimming in a competition and it starts at 12:30. I thought it was Saturday night, but it's not. It's Sunday, like midday. So I'll be watching the race because I would have liked to do a pre-show, right? Maybe I'll do it for qualifying. But anyway, Sunday race, I'll be watching it from poolside on my phone. And then the race, I don't know, the meet is like 2-3 hours or something. And then by the time I get home, it'll be a good few hours anyway till I'm able to give you guys the recap on the Sunday. But regardless, I think there will be rather a lot to talk about, so, and to digest as well. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. Thanks all for watching recently. Thanks for all the new Spotify support as well. I don't mention the Spotify often, but I've been putting all these videos on Spotify now for the last, I don't know, month and a bit or so. And some of you guys have been liking that. So appreciate that. I know that I've got quite a lot of viewers on Spotify, but not many followers. If you're listening on Spotify and you haven't yet followed, then that'd be great. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll be seeing you next time. It's practice tomorrow.